The halls of Westminster erupted into chaos this week as Prime Minister Keir Starmer found himself backed into a corner over one of the most embarrassing national security failures in recent British political history. The collapse of the China spy case has left Starmer scrambling for answers, facing accusations of weakness, cover-ups, and fundamental incompetence on matters of national security. This isn't just another political squabble. This is about Britain's ability to protect itself from foreign threats, and the government appears to have spectacularly failed. The drama centers around two British men who were accused of some of the most serious crimes imaginable, spying for China. Christopher Cash, a 29-year-old former parliamentary researcher with close ties to senior Conservative MPs, and Christopher Barry, a 32-year-old teacher, were charged under the century-old Official Secrets Act. The charges were devastating. They were accused of providing prejudicial information to a foreign state between December 2021 and February 2023. This wasn't just any foreign state, but China, Britain's most significant strategic rival. The allegations painted a picture of systematic espionage at the heart of British democracy. Cash, who worked as director of the China Research Group and had close connections to prominent MPs like Tom Tugendhat and Alicia Kearns, was accused of gathering sensitive political intelligence. The prosecution alleged that he and Barry were in contact with a Chinese intelligence agent, passing along information about the inner workings of the British political system, government positions on Chinese businesses, and personal details about MPs' activities. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn that exposes the sheer incompetence of the current government. Last month, just weeks before the trial was scheduled to begin, the entire case collapsed like a house of cards. The Crown Prosecution Service, in an almost unprecedented move, announced they would offer no evidence against either man. The reason? The government had failed to provide sufficient evidence proving that China represented a threat to national security at the time of the alleged offenses. Let that sink in for a moment. The British government, with all its intelligence agencies, diplomatic resources, and national security apparatus, could not provide evidence that China, a country engaged in massive cyber warfare against the West, supporting Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and conducting what MI5 describes as large-scale espionage operations, represents a threat to national security. It's a failure so complete, so staggering in its implications, that it defies belief. The Director of Public Prosecutions, Stephen Parkinson, laid bare the government's failure in a letter to parliamentary committees. He revealed that the CPS had spent months trying to obtain the necessary evidence from the government. But despite repeated requests, none of the witness statements provided confirmed that China represented a threat to national security at the time of the alleged offenses. By late August, it became clear this evidence would never be forthcoming, and the case had to be dropped. This brings us to yesterday's explosive Prime Minister's questions, where Starmer faced his first real test from new Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch since the parliamentary recess. The Prime Minister began the parliamentary session with an extraordinary and unprecedented move.
I'm deeply disappointed by the outcome. We wanted to see prosecutions. Mr. Speaker, I know just how seriously, rightly, that you take these matters. National security will always be the first priority of this government, and we will always defend against espionage. In recent weeks, there have been baseless accusations put about by the party opposite. Let me set out the facts. The relevant period was when these offences took place. That was under the Conservative government between the years of 2021 and 2023. This period was bookended by the integrated review of 2021, the beginning of the period, and the refresh of that review in 2023, setting out their policy. These statements of government policy were very carefully worded to not describe China as an enemy. Instead,
Mr. Stewart, somebody who is on the Speaker's panel, I've told once before, should know better. Do not question my judgment. I thought it was important that the Prime Minister tells this House first rather than somewhere else. So please, this is very important to me and very important to the House. I take it seriously, so I don't need any more side comments. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The review of 21 and the refresh of 23 were very carefully worded to not describe China as an enemy. Instead, they stated increased national security protections where China poses a threat, and that the then government would engage with China to leave room open for constructive and predictable relations. The Deputy National Security Advisor, Matt Collins, set out the then government's position in a substantive witness statement in 2023, which was subsequently supplemented by 2 further short statements. The Cabinet Secretary assures me that the DSNA faithfully set out the policy of the then Tory government. I know firsthand that the DSNA is a civil servant of the utmost integrity, and those opposite who worked with him, I'm sure, would agree with that assessment. Under this government, no minister or special advisor played any role in the provision of evidence. I can't say what the position was of the previous government in relation to the involvement of ministers or special advisors. If the Leader of the Opposition knows the answer to that question, and I suspect that she does, I invite her to update the House. Last night, the Crown Prosecution Service clarified that, in their view, the decision whether to publish the witness statements of the DSNA is for the government. I therefore carefully considered this question this morning, and after legal advice, I have decided to publish the witness statements. Given the information contained, we will conduct a short process, but I want to make clear I intend to publish the witness statements in full. Let me say this. To be clear, had the Conservatives been quicker in updating our legislation, a review that started in 2015, these individuals could have been prosecuted and we would not be where we are without. I'm happy to answer any questions on this.
Rather waiting for questions, he launched into a lengthy statement about the case, claiming deep disappointment and announcing he would publish witness statements for transparency. But his explanation was pure political theater. He argued that because the alleged offenses took place under the Conservative government, it was their policy toward China that mattered, not his government's current stance. Badenoch immediately went on the offensive, calling the entire affair simply unbelievable.
Exactly as I expected, the Prime Minister had to be dragged out at the top of PMQs to give a statement that answers no questions. I don't know what they're laughing at. We are talking about the security of this Parliament. He had to be dragged out to repeat only more obfuscation. It is simply unbelievable.
She systematically dismantled Starmer's attempts to blame the Conservatives, pointing out glaring contradictions in his position. The Conservative leader came armed with evidence, citing the 2021 Integrated Review that specifically described China as the biggest state-based threat to UK economic security.
The Prime Minister had to be dragged out at the top of PMQs to give a statement that answers no questions. I don't know what they're laughing at. We are talking about the security of this Parliament. He had to be dragged out to repeat only more obfuscation. It is simply unbelievable. It is simply unbelievable that he is trying to say the last government did not classify China as a threat. So I will refresh his memory. In 2021, the previous government's integrated review described China as the biggest state-based threat to the UK's economic security. In 2024, the Minister for Security said from that dispatch box that China poses a threat. But let's leave aside the government. In 2022, the Director General of MI5 in November classified China as a threat in his remarks. How is it possible that the government failed to provide the evidence that the CPS needed to prosecute?
The substantive evidence was provided in 2023 by the previous government. That is when the witness statement was submitted.
She also referenced MI5's Director General Ken McCallum, who had classified China as a threat back in 2022, questioning how the government could possibly claim there was insufficient evidence to proceed with the prosecution. The exchanges that followed were nothing short of explosive. Starmer attempted to defend his position by claiming that the substantive evidence was provided in 2023 under the previous government, but Badenoch wasn't having any of it. She pressed him on whether Deputy National Security Advisor Matthew Collins had acted without consulting National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell when writing the crucial witness statements. This is where Starmer made what could be a fatal error. When directly asked whether Collins had made these critical decisions without discussing them with Powell, Starmer answered with a blunt yes. He insisted that no minister or special advisor was involved in the decision-making process. But then, perhaps realizing the implications of what he'd just said, he quickly added that he would double-check this claim. This moment of uncertainty, this admission that he wasn't entirely sure of the facts, handed Badenoch a political gift. The Conservative leader pounced immediately, delivering one of the most devastating lines heard in Parliament this year. She asked the chamber what was the point of having a lawyer rather than a leader as Prime Minister if he couldn't even get the law right on a point of national security. The confrontation reached its climax when Badenoch accused the Prime Minister of orchestrating a cover-up, stating that the CPS had made clear in the strongest terms that the prosecution was dropped because this government is too weak to stand up to China.
This is a matter of fact. It is not a matter of what the previous government had thought. It is not a matter of it not meeting a legal test. It did. Something must have changed when the charges were brought and when the case collapsed. The charges were brought under us, the case collapsed under them. Can the Prime Minister tell us what changed and what collapsed the case?
Mr. Speaker, I've said I will publish the witness statements in full. The whole House will then see exactly what was set out in 2023 in the substantive witness statement and exactly what was set out in the two supplementary witness statements, and she will then realise what she's just said is entirely baseless.
Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, the CPS has said in the clearest terms that this prosecution was dropped because this government did not provide the statement they expected. Why should we believe a man who at the last Prime Minister's questions said he had full confidence in the best friend of a convicted paedophile?
She demanded not just the publication of witness statements, but all meeting minutes and correspondence with the Crown Prosecution Service, suggesting that the government was hiding something far more damaging. The revelations keep getting worse for Starmer's government.
That the Prime Minister and the government have been caught lying and U-turning on this on multiple occasions. But now we've got these witness statements that have been released. Here is the crucial rub of it, Mike, which is that the government and the Prime Minister have been saying there was no political interference. And now we see within the wording of the witness statement from the Deputy National Security Advisor a direct extract from the Labour Party manifesto, the general election. The very, very identical words, which proves that there was and has been political interference.
Yeah.
Quite extraordinary.
Well, there's no way that we're supposed to be so stupid as to believe the weasel words that have been coming out of the Labour government basically since the weekend. I spotted this on Sunday, right? Bridget Phillipson was out and about on tour, talking to all manner of people. Obviously doesn't ever come on our show. But here's what she said. And when you listen to what she says about Jonathan Powell's involvement, you smell a rat. Have a look.
What I can say today, to be absolutely clear, is that he was not involved in the substance of the case and discussions around that, or the evidence connected to the case. I can give you that reassurance. He did not have those conversations around the substance or the evidence of the case. These are matters for the relevant authorities, the Crown Prosecution Service, and they date back to 2023.
The substance and the relevance of the case. You know, that sounds to me like obfuscation and the telling of untruths.
She's not a lawyer, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Starmer, as we know, is a lawyer.
Conservative MP Neil O'Brien spotted a glaring inconsistency that undermines Starmer's entire defense. While the Prime Minister insisted that only the previous Conservative government's position on China mattered, the final witness statement dated August 4th discusses the current Labour government's policy toward China in the present tense. The statement reads that the UK government is committed to pursuing a positive relationship with China to strengthen understanding, cooperation, and stability. This revelation is politically toxic for Starmer. It suggests that his government's own conciliatory stance toward China may have influenced the evidence provided to prosecutors. If true, it would mean that Labour's desire to maintain good relations with Beijing potentially compromised a national security prosecution. The implications are staggering. It would suggest that political considerations trumped security concerns in one of the most serious espionage cases in recent British history. The broader context makes this failure even more damaging. Britain is facing an unprecedented level of foreign interference and espionage. MI5 Director General Ken McCallum has repeatedly warned about the scale of Chinese intelligence operations against the UK. Just last week, he expressed frustration about the case's collapse, emphasizing that Britain needs to defend itself resolutely against security threats from China while seizing opportunities that serve the nation's interests. The Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle, captured the mood of many parliamentarians when he expressed his anger and disappointment about the case's collapse. His job is to protect Parliament, and he feels that protection isn't being provided. When the person responsible for parliamentary security expresses such concerns publicly, it indicates the severity of the situation. What makes this even more embarrassing for the government is the nature of the alleged espionage operation. According to the prosecution's case, Cash and Barry were accused of providing a Chinese intelligence agent with at least 34 reports containing sensitive political intelligence. The information allegedly included details about MPs' personal and political activities, government positions on Chinese businesses, and sensitive discussions about Taiwan and human rights abuses in Xinjiang. The operation appeared sophisticated and targeted. The prosecution alleged that the Chinese agent would task Barry with collecting specific information, sometimes with turnaround times as short as 13 hours. Cash allegedly sent Barry information about senior politicians, including details about cabinet appointments and confidential government positions. Some of this information was marked as highly confidential and not for sharing, yet it allegedly ended up in reports submitted to the Chinese agent. Both men have consistently denied the charges and maintained their innocence. Cash has stated that he believed Barry was working for a strategic advisory company helping clients invest in the UK, and that the information he shared was either publicly available or political gossip from Westminster. Barry similarly claims he thought he was providing reports to a Chinese company with clients seeking trading links with Britain. But regardless of their guilt or innocence, the fact remains that the British government proved incapable of making a legal case that China represents a threat to national security. This is the same China that has been accused of massive cyber attacks against Western infrastructure, of providing crucial support to Russia's war in Ukraine, and of running extensive espionage operations against democratic governments worldwide. The political implications for Starmer are severe and long-lasting. This isn't just about one failed prosecution, it's about fundamental questions of competence and priorities. The Conservative opposition is already painting Labour as weak on national security, too eager to appease authoritarian regimes, and more concerned with maintaining trade relationships than protecting British interests. The timing couldn't be worse for Starmer's government. At a time when Britain needs to project strength and resolve in the face of growing international threats, this case makes the country look weak and divided. Allied governments will be watching and wondering whether Britain can be trusted with sensitive intelligence if it can't even prosecute its own spies effectively. The failure also raises serious questions about the competence of Britain's national security apparatus under Labour leadership. If senior officials like Matthew Collins are making crucial decisions about espionage cases without proper consultation or oversight, what does that say about the government's approach to national security? If ministers and special advisors truly had no involvement in such a significant case, it suggests a dangerous disconnect between political leadership and security operations. Badenoch has already indicated that this issue won't disappear quietly. The Conservative Party sees this as a defining moment that exposes Labour's fundamental weaknesses on national security. They're demanding full transparency about who made what decisions and when, and they're not satisfied with Starmer's evasive answers. The international ramifications are equally concerning. China will undoubtedly view this case's collapse as a vindication of its intelligence operations against Britain. Other hostile states will take note that Britain struggles to prosecute espionage cases effectively. The message being sent is that foreign intelligence services can operate against British interests with relative impunity. Looking ahead, Starmer faces several immediate challenges. He needs to provide clear, consistent answers about his government's role in the case's collapse. He needs to address the apparent contradiction between his public statements and the evidence contained in the witness statements. Most importantly, he needs to demonstrate that his government takes national security seriously and won't allow political considerations to compromise Britain's security interests. The publication of the witness statements, which Starmer promised as a transparency measure, has only created more questions and contradictions. Rather than drawing a line under the controversy, it has provided opposition parties with new ammunition and raised fresh doubts about the government's handling of the case. This scandal represents everything that frustrates voters about modern politics: the evasion, the blame shifting, the technical legal arguments that miss the bigger picture. When British citizens see suspected foreign spies walking free while their government argues about legal technicalities and whose fault it really is, they lose faith in the entire system. The China spy case collapse will likely become a defining moment for Starmer's premiership. It encapsulates concerns about Labour's approach to national security, their relationship with authoritarian regimes, and their ability to put British interests first when faced with difficult decisions. Whether Starmer can recover from this debacle and restore confidence in his government's handling of national security issues remains to be seen, but the damage to his reputation as a competent leader may prove irreversible. What's certain is that this story is far from over. As more details emerge and as parliamentary committees investigate the case's collapse, Starmer will face continued pressure to explain how such a significant national security failure occurred on his watch. The Chinese spy case has become a symbol of everything that can go wrong when political considerations override security imperatives. And it's a lesson that will haunt British politics for years to come.